What movie or series lit your fuse and made you have to tell stories on screen?
I would say probably Chaplin's The Great Dictator, because it was a very risky movie for him to make. It was a brilliant satire, and it actually changed the world in that he was finally pressured, apparently, by Roosevelt to make the movie, because there was a lot of umming and ahhing, as you know, as to there's a lot of pressure for him not to make the film. And Roosevelt felt that it would enable the US to have popular support for getting involved in World War II. And so really that movie really had an impact in the world, a huge impact in the world that we see today. I think it was just after university. And actually, interestingly enough, I saw that at the same time as Strangelove, which also to me was, one of the great satires, but also hilariously funny with, my favorite actor at its helm, directed by, the most innovative and brilliant director at the time, Kubrick. And I think it was the combination of those two post-university that compelled me, because at the time I just left Cambridge, and all my friends had gone into law or finance, or there was a lot of pressure to seek jobs that would earn you a living. And I naively said, no, I'm going to try and be an actor and a comedian. And it was as stupid as saying you were going to become an astronaut. I mean, we didn't know anyone who could make their living doing that. And I think seeing those two films made me realize that if you could, if you strive for something like that, you could actually, have a bit more of an impact. It wasn't just entertainment. You could entertain, make people laugh, and, and have an effect. So the fusing of comedy and cinema and, international politics was kind of an astounding thing when I read about that.
On your way up, what movie or series did you watch that was so good it made you question if you could ever rise to that level?
Well, I mean, so much stuff. I mean, there's so much brilliant work out there. I think also Sellers as well, seeing Being there and realizing that he had that ability to excel in comedy and drama, and slightly fuse the two. I think, that, there are so many different shows or, comics or that, the late Gary Shandling, who I amazingly was the first person I ever met when I came to LA, and I was the biggest fan ever of the Larry Sanders Show. And I remember it was my first night in LA. I was invited round to Jim Carrey's house, and Gary Shandling was there. Jim Carrey was the biggest star in the world, and that was intimidating enough. But when Gary Shandling walked in the room, I was like, oh shit, it's the greatest living comedian. So yeah, I mean, that was the perfect TV show. Again, incredible. There are these shows that once in a while, they're so innovative that they reinvent the world of entertainment. And that show really led to The Office and that whole sense of completely realistic documentary style performance, which I used in Borat and my stuff. And actually Gary Shandling, when he lived, was an unpaid consultant on all of my movies. And actually, one of the last emails he sent me before he died, he was just telling me to carry on and invent, and that this would be a really creative period. It was amazing. He was trying to bring me up because I just had a bomb in the cinema, and he was trying to build me up and tell me how talented he thought he was. And he was so concerned with that, he didn't realize that he was going to die the week after. That's how selfless a guy he was. But there's, so many performances, on the dramatic side, anything by Daniel Day-Lewis, it would make me think that I'd have to give up. But yes, so many. Listen, so many performances that make me feel not worthy.
Whether it was your own work or approval from someone who mattered to you, what first gave you the confidence that you belonged?
I think it was the audience. I remember, so I went to Cambridge University for the sole purpose of trying to get into the Cambridge Footlights, the place where Peter Cook had come from and Monty Python. I failed to get in. I was rejected actually twice a year for 3 years. And I did start thinking, wait a minute, why am I even doing this? And I remember being on stage, I created a character who was very, very stupid. And he was giving a lecture on why, he was called Solly, and he was giving a lecture on how to be funny. And I didn't realize I'd created a clown character. And I remember hearing the audience laugh hysterically, and it was a new style of laughter. And I basically improvised in this character for 20 minutes on stage in this, the amateur dramatic club, and thinking I was onto something. And then I went on from that, and I went to study with this legendary clown teacher and Buffon teacher called Philippe Gaulier. And at the end, people would come from all around the world to study with him. There would be people flying from Australia. They'd get on stage and he'd suddenly hit his drum and he'd go sit down, and they'd burst into tears. They'd spent all their money getting there to study with him. And he really was the guy who at the end of the course said, you would sit with him one-on-one and go, can I do something? And he'd say, you can do both, whatever you want. And that was the confidence. I sometimes had to refer to I wrote it down at the time. I sometimes had to, refer to that little book or call him up over the years in those moments of insecurity, which are often.
What was the biggest obstacle you overcame that allowed you to turn the projects that influenced you into your own language?
Well, the first thing was the law. I have to tell you, I get very scared and nervous as myself, but something happens when I go into character that I'm suddenly calm. I feel that I'm in the character, even though I'm thinking, and again, this is probably the first time I've ever talked about this, even though mentally I'm in character, I'm thinking like the character, and everything that comes out of my mouth is in character, right? Because think about it, if any words come around that are inconsistent or anything I say that's inconsistent, the scene falls to pieces. And that can be if the scene is 5 days long, which happened in the last Borat. But I'm also thinking about the edit, how I'm going to edit the scene and how the director's going to edit the scene, where the cameras are, because I want to make sure that we've got the best angle on my face, that we can see my two eyes, that we can see the subject that I'm speaking to. If it's something like CPAC, I want to make sure that there's an angle on Pence. And the director's is sometimes there, but he's sometimes out of the room. So I can often get a better view in certain times than anyone. And then obviously trying to, then obviously my other concern is the security concern. How do I get out of this safely? Something like CPAC or the gun rally where I sung a song called the Wuhan Flu, which was pointing to the racism of Trump's conspiracy theory that this was an intentional virus by China. There I'm trying to get the performance, but for a scene like that, I was very aware that people could start shooting. And I was told by the security that to wear a bulletproof vest for the first time in my life. And actually, not only that, we'd prepared for, I was told if one person starts shooting there, or one shot is fired, then it's likely that a number of other people will start shooting. And so we had an amplifier built on stage that was almost kind of bomb-proof. They said that I could get behind that amplifier and it could take, hundreds of rounds without, and they would come and get me. But yes, I think it is, once I'm on stage or something like that, I am thinking about primarily, how do I get the scene? I'm not thinking about how do I make this performance believable? How do I do the best version of the lines? How do I because you've got one shot to get it right. So you have to get the scene. You have to. So the performance has to be perfect the first time, and you have to make sure that you've got everything you need in the edit. So I think it's that pressure that sort of keeps me calm. The first time I ever did Borat, I was brought before the heads of the channel that I did it at. They said, you try that again and you're fired. And I did try it again. I was fired and the channel was shut down. And then I remember doing a character I did called Ali G, who's this kind of wannabe gangster rapper who really lives in this white suburb of London called Staines. And again, when I did it on Channel 4, they just said, well, listen, this is illegal. And it was really working with the lawyers and trying to work out what is a way to make Borat comply with the standards that they would allow to put stuff on TV, because no channel ever wanted to be sued. No movie studio wanted to be sued, which meant that because I was dealing with real people, and at the time I was the first comedian who was taking real characters into the real world, no one wanted to put this stuff on the air. So I needed to work out a way where these channels would feel happy putting me on the air and didn't feel like they were going to be fined so much money that that it was just not worth it for them. And again, obviously, the first Borat, I got sued hundreds of times. So that was it. It was really working out the legality of everything I've done.
What keeps you optimistic that this industry will be able to rebound?
Well, I think one interesting thing about streaming during the pandemic is that it's proven how much people need to watch stories and great stories, and they will consume it. Something I played this year in Chicago 7 as well. I played Abby Hoffman in that, as you know. A movie like that, and I remember sitting with the head of a studio. I was pitching them Borat at the time, and they said, Sacha, what do you think? Do you think we should make Chicago 7? And I said, well, no one's really going to watch it, right? So it's what's the value of Oscar nominations for your studio? It was a very blunt conversation. I said, if that value is important to you, then do it. But not many people are going to go to the cinema to see a story about a trial that they haven't heard of before. Movies like that, as you know, can have a very limited box office. What I think the pandemic has shown and streaming has shown by that movie, Chicago 7, going to Netflix, is that actually there's a huge audience out there who love a movie like that. And it's just about accessing them and seeing, can you motivate those people to get to the audience? The advantage that the streamers have got is that they have the algorithm, they have the data on that guy there, that guy there, that guy, you know, that family there. Can these studios get that same kind of data? But, you know, the proof is that these obscure movies that may have made almost nothing at the, you know, they would have been referred to as specialty box office, are suddenly huge hits. So it's actually inspiring, because I was always worried in the past, people would say stuff about, oh, the Academy Awards, you know, I disagree with that, it's out of touch. And I used to argue, okay, the most important thing about the Academy Awards is it gives an incentive to studios to finance movies that will probably lose money. I go, if you take away the awards cycle, they're probably not going to make movies like Chicago 7, which was that was the conversation I had with that studio head. And the beauty now is, you know, that actually people out there want to consume great movies, no matter what the topic. So that's the benefit, I think, of streamers. They have so much, the benefit for an artist is that they have so much content that they cannot manage it. So you have tight deadlines, you have to get it in, and they need the hours. Whereby, you're right, a studio would micromanage it. I would say one other thing is there are certain types of movies, and I do hope comedy is one of them, whereby you have an added benefit by watching it in a group. The pleasure of live comedy, which is why, you know, Chris Rock and Chappelle are such, you know, are the highest paid stars on Netflix, is because people love watching comedy in groups. You know, they love laughing together. So I think there are certain communal experiences that you will get in a cinema, and I don't know whether, you know, those are the things that cinema will win in the battle against streaming. I don't know. And I think that is it, if studios can, and I am in no way an expert on this at all, so but take anything I say with a pinch of salt. But I think if studios are able to find out who those people are who love movies like Chicago 7, then it's, you know, you have to then just work out how do you take them from the living room to the cinema.